Hello and welcome to Addicted to Lacrosse. This is Season 3, Episode 10 for Sunday, March the 6th, 2016. My name is Graham Perro, and with me as usual are Tyler Fitch and Melissa Daphne. We've got a couple things to talk about tonight. Adam Jones set a record on Saturday night, and we're going to talk about that. And there was a couple of interesting games to discuss, kind of the same as last week. We had an overtime game. We had a game that was settled, that was kind of back and forth all the way through and settled at the very end, though not quite as close to the end as a couple last week. And then we had one that was kind of a blowout, but not really. Certainly not as much as the Toronto-Rochester game last week. But I'd have to say the Bandits pretty much were in control of that whole game, but we will get to that. We will start with Adam Jones. This was a bit of a weird one, but Adam Jones broke the record for most consecutive regular season games with a goal. He scored, he scored 7 actually, but he has scored in 56 straight regular season games, which broke the record. And now I don't remember who the
Grant
record was.
Jr.
It's
was
probably,
the record holder.
I was going to say it's probably Grant, but I couldn't remember for sure. But yeah, so Jones broke his teammate's record with 56 straight games. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Tyler, I think you were wanted to talk about this one, did you not?
Yeah, the interesting aspect here is it's 56 straight games in the regular season only that he's attended and played in. He's missed games because of work. Streak still counts. As you've mentioned before, he did not score a goal in the playoff game. Streak still counts. So I think it should be an asterisk. And it's still phenomenal. The guy is amazing, an elite goal scorer. But it's not 56 straight Mammoth games. I think that should matter at some point. What do you think, Melissa?
I definitely agree with that. That there should be some qualifiers. There's something to be said about straight games that you've played in, but taking away playoff games, well, that's still a game you played in. So even though it's not regular season, that should still count. It's not like when John Grant Jr. has his all-time scoring record, going up. That doesn't exclude playoff games. So why, in this instance, is it that way? I mean, it's great. I'm really happy that he broke the record. I think he's a great player, but it does. It really has those odd qualifiers that, maybe there's other players that should be in the running too because they really shine in the playoffs and none of those goals count, or they have some players just really play badly in the playoffs, and it seems like they're kind of squeaking through. So it is interesting. What do you think, Graham?
Yeah, I guess I'm with you guys that we don't want to take anything away from Jones, who's an outstanding player, and this is an outstanding event, if you want to call it that. But yeah, the more qualifiers you have to add to something, the sort of, I don't want to say less important, but the less real it is. If it was just he's played in 56 straight games and scored a goal in each one of them, then that would be one thing. But then it's 56 straight games that he's played in, not 56 straight games that the team has played in. And so you take that away. And then it's just regular season games. We're not talking about playoff games. So I mean, if you start adding things, we're not going to include Friday night games because he sometimes works on Friday and maybe he's really tired. So we'll take the Friday night games away. So he's scored on however many straight Saturday or Sunday games, and the more things you add to it, the less it really means. So like I said, we don't want to take anything away from him, but it's a little weird that you have to add a couple of things to it before it's actually true. It was one other thing I was going to say, and I lost what it was. So we will move on until I remember what that is. The other thing, and I think this was something Melissa wanted to say. Oh, what I wanted to say was also just in case. Melissa's having some technical difficulties with her computer, and so she may vanish. Hopefully that doesn't happen and everything is okay. But I wanted to mention that before before we can continue. The other thing, I think, Melissa, this is something you wanted to talk about, was the Fox Sports feed, or lack thereof.
I don't know that I specifically wanted to talk about it. It was more I was being snarky. Fox Sports still sucks. It was really annoying. I actually had a Saturday evening that lined up, and there was 2 games going on, not to mention the Mammoth game that I could watch on ESPN. And I switch over to Fox Sports, and it tells me there is nothing there. That there's no such games, that there's nothing live, and it's like, wait a sec. I see the 2 games. I see on Point Streak. One of them is like in the first half, one's in the second half. Why can't I watch these? So, yeah, once again, Fox Sports wasn't there for me to watch the game.
And I watched both of the Fox Sports games this weekend. In Canada, they were fine. I didn't have any problems. The feed dropped every now and again, probably 3-4 times per game. But that seems to be par for the course. It just kind of happens, and you go and refresh the page, and it's there back in 5 seconds or so. But I saw a lot of tweets and comments from people in the U.S. trying to get these games. Some of them were able to for short periods of time, and then they went away. Others just kept getting an error message saying that the game was over and the broadcast is finished and you're done. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but I did see some people that just said, well, forget this isn't happening, I'm going to go watch something else. And so we lost them for the night. So that's kind of unfortunate. So we've talked about going back to YouTube a number of times in the past, and I don't remember, maybe I'm just not remembering them, but I don't remember these problems happening all that often when the league was on YouTube. And that, of course, gave us I was going to say that just gave us the advantage of being able to watch the games again the next day, because they're just always there. Once they're on YouTube, they're just there. So that was a great thing. Sorry, Melissa, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, back in the day when we actually had the B2 feed, there was a lot of complaints because there was a lot of issues. And part of that, I think, was because it was a paid service, and so when you're paying for it and you're having issues, you tend to be a little grumpier. But I would take all the issues that B2 had over everything that Fox has done. I am so beyond frustrated, and I'm a hardcore fan. So what does this do to all the other fans that have just discovered the sport, that are just getting into it? You're losing them, and it's really going to, in my opinion, hinder the growth of the sport when you have all these newer fans that really don't know what's going on and happen across it and start getting into it, and then they can't watch anything because you can't replay games, and it doesn't work. I mean, it's as a fan, this is the most frustrating season I have had in 13 years.
Yeah, the lack of replays is, I think, killing the fans who really care. The poor quality of the live feeds is turning away fans that trying to care. And it's awful. It's stepping backwards from where you had a working solution just doesn't make any sense, and it's a poor choice by a league. I don't know if they're penny pinching. Fox Sports was cheaper than going on YouTube with the Lacrosse Network, but the Lacrosse Network solution combined with YouTube worked. I'd say it worked perfectly. You got replays, you could do all sorts of stuff you just can't do nowadays. And I believe it's something that the new commissioner, Sikevich, will be working on, and he's hearing this. I mean, he's probably trying to watch games, and it sucks, and it's not a good time. And but I just don't know if he was around for what was comparatively a good time to know that it should be a simple solution.
Well, it's like you said, they had something that worked. So to move so far away from that and create such a horrible user experience, even last season we didn't have YouTube, but you could still stream through the NLL site. And it wasn't all the games, but there was a good portion of the games. But I remember there was other issues with it. But yeah, there has to be some option in place. YouTube, I know there was issues when people were trying to watch live and you couldn't watch it on Xbox or through the apps, essentially. You had to go through the actual website. Okay, so that was a little problematic, but at least there was replay. Now you just don't have any of that. And sorry, Graham, to cut you off.
I was just going to say, kind of what you said before, that if you're having these problems week in and week out because you're a diehard fan, there's an awful lot of people who are going to have these problems once and just say, okay, well, screw this, I'm not going to bother because it's too much work. And then they're gone. And you might get them back a couple of years from now once you've got a solution in place, but you might not. They might just say, yeah, I remember checking out that lacrosse thing and it was kind of fun, but I couldn't watch the games. It was a big pain in the ass. And then they just move on. We're seeing the problems repeatedly because we're the hardcore people and we want to watch these games and we want to watch them every weekend. But I don't know how many people we're losing, and we'll never get them back because they just can't watch games. I do remember a couple of years ago, people were saying, "So you're doing this lacrosse thing. How do I check out these games?" And right away, I just say youtube.com/TLN. TLN for the Lacrosse Network. That's all I had to say. And every Friday or Saturday, there's a couple games. Sometimes they're on Sundays, but just go check it out, and that's it. Now it's like, okay, well, there's a page on NLL.com, but I don't remember what it is offhand. I have to go find it. And some of the games you have to watch through Fox, and if you're in the U.S., you have to use a different link. And some of them are on TSN Go in Canada, and some of them are on ESPN in the U.S., but not all of them. And provider, and it just depends on a whole bunch of things, and it's just too much of a hassle for a lot of people. They might just say, okay, yeah, forget it, never mind. And that's unfortunate because we're the ones that are going to check it out. We're going to do the work to watch the games, but there's an awful lot of people who aren't going to bother. They're just going to try it out and say, okay, this is a big pain, and not bother, and and they're gone. So that's unfortunate. So maybe we should start some sort of grassroots campaign and get everybody to email Nick Zakevich and say, hey, for next season, maybe we try that YouTube thing again, and see what he thinks. So we should move on to the games of the week. We'll start off with Rochester-Calgary. This is Calgary's third straight overtime game and third straight overtime loss. So it's odd. I don't remember seeing a team playing 3 straight overtime games, let alone losing them all. I guess the silver lining for Calgary is that they're in all of these games. They're not getting blown away. But I did watch this one, or at least parts of it. I thought it was kind of a messy game, but neither of the offenses really looked like they were clicking very well. And the low score, I mean, it was only a 9-8 game, and so the low score was partially that the goaltenders played really well. Both Vince and Poulin played really well. But I thought it was also partially that the offenses weren't playing very well. There seemed to be I think I tweeted that it looked like a preseason game because there were people dropping passes, there were people passing to nobody. Somebody would try a over-the-shoulder pass and miss the guy who was passing it 2 by 10 feet, and these kind of things. It just looked like it was really early in the season and they were kind of rusty, which is weird because it's halfway through the season. So I didn't really notice this until I was writing my Moneyballers article this morning. Rochester tied the game or took leads 7 times. The Roughnecks did it 6 times. But every single one of those goals that Rochester scored to either tie the game or break the tie was scored by Dan Dawson or assisted by Dan Dawson. So he had a pretty awesome night. It was only 7 points, but that's really all you need when your team only scores 9 and you only give up 8. So a great night for Dawson. Cody Jamieson had 7 points as well. But, I mean, they only had 9 points. They didn't have anybody with a 10 or 12 point night. But Dawson was like I said, there were certainly times when he didn't look like he knew what he was doing. He was passing to nobody. But when he was on, he was really on. So it was kind of an odd game that way. So Melissa, did you see this one?
Nope, this is one of the ones I tried to watch.
Sorry, dumb
Which
question
went to overtime, but that is interesting what you're saying that Calgary has played in 3 overtime games and lost all 3, but I feel like the Albany Attack or Anaheim Storm, one of those guys actually kind of had that situation where they kept losing 1-goal games. So by the end of the season, they had a completely losing record, but they were actually in every single game, and it was just down to overtime or just 1 or 2 goals. So definitely, I think there's precedence for it. But that is crazy that Dustin was involved in so many points. Did you see this one, Tyler?
Pretty much. I watched the first half because time zones. Then the stealth were starting, and they're my priority. Then I put this on the side screen in the living room, and I had it on mute, so I didn't watch it closely. But I was watching the at the end there. By that point, the stealth had already done their thing to not make it a priority anymore. Anyways, great goalie play. I think it was 4-3 score at the half. And yeah, the offenses weren't that crisp, but I saw good goalie play. And yeah, Dan Dawson is an absolute killer in tight situations. He's, I don't know, like, I guess the word would be like fearless. He is calm, cool, collective in those situations. You don't ever see him freak out. He's like, oh, I can see that guy's open. I'll set up the assist, or I'll just go score myself because that's what it's time to do. He's the player I least like facing with the game on the line. Even though I usually say like Jammer's a great shot, the Stealth have never beat Dan Dawson in playoffs. And he's in the East now, so they don't see him that much. But when he was in the West and the Stealth faced him, he never beat him once. So the guy is amazing. So yeah, that's my thoughts there. You got to cover that guy. What do we got next, Graham?
All right. One other thing I wanted to mention about that game, and Tyler and I talked briefly about this before the show, was a weird goal that Calgary kind of scored and kind of didn't. And I don't think I've ever seen this before. This was a goal that where, if you can believe this, the ball crossed the line, never touched mesh, and never touched the floor. And if you just told me that, I would have said I don't think that's even physically possible, but I saw it happen. I can't remember who shot it, but the ball went in, hit the left post, went behind the goalie, hit the right post, and then went out. And so everybody just thought, oh, what a weird shot. Hit both goal posts, and that was it. And obviously, it must have followed the goal line between the two posts, because just that's how physics works. But the overhead camera guy decided, let me take a look at that again, and we started seeing replays of it. And the ball followed a curved path between the two goalposts. It hit the left post, and I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but it went in that way, hit the right post, and went out. And the overhead camera shot clearly shows the ball over the line in the net, but it never touched anything other than the two posts. So there's no reason that shouldn't have been called a goal. Calgary finally saw the replay and threw the challenge flag, but you only have 20 seconds after the play to throw the challenge flag, and 20 seconds had already expired, so the ref said, sorry, we can't review it, and they moved on. And the fact that Calgary lost by 1 goal, I thought, okay, well, this is going to be an onslaught of people saying that 1 goal cost us the game, and the refs are terrible, and they should be all fired, and all this kind of thing. But to their credit, I have not seen any posting like that. I think I saw one guy saying, well, there it is again, the refs screwed us over. But that was it. I didn't see anything else from Calgary fans. So that was a really odd play. I don't know how you can fault the refs in that situation. There's no way they could have looked at that and said, oh, the ball probably went in or might have gone in. Let's go check it out, because the spin on the ball must have been unbelievable to make it do that. But anyway, that was one of the weird plays of the night, so I wanted to mention that. And we'll move to Colorado, New England, which this one was on TSN Go in Canada, so I couldn't see it. So I don't really have much to say about this other than Adam Jones, which we mentioned before. I guess he broke one record, and I don't know what the NLL record is for most consecutive sock tricks, but in the last 10 years, I guess 11 seasons, I have game stats going back to 2005. And this is the 3rd time that somebody scored 6 goals in 2 consecutive games. And the first one was Ethan Iannucci in 2008 when he scored about 1 million goals. And the second was Rhys Dutch in 2010. So Adam Jones becomes the 3rd player in about 11 years to do that. So that's pretty impressive. Not only did he score 6, but he scored 7. and that was half of Colorado's output, and it was enough to beat the Black Wolves. So that was the battle of the first place team. So I don't have anything to say about this one. Tyler, did you see this one as well as the other two?
Yeah, I thankfully it was on the ESPN, so I watched it this morning, and great game. And New England lost, but they were pretty much down the whole time, but they never let the Mammoth just pull away. So I think they probably built a little character there on the losing side. But man, that Adam Jones, on top of having 2 straight sock tricks, one graphic they flashed, it was for home games his 3rd straight sock trick at home. It was the guy's on a tear. I can see now that it wasn't just the stealth that couldn't stop him last weekend, even though they should have at least one time would have made a difference. They got a good little. They don't. Get my thoughts here. They don't play each other a lot, being the Black Wolves and the Mammoth, but they've got a lot of fire on the floor there. Pretty much happens anytime you have Sean Evans playing on one of the 2 sides. But it was a very spirited match between the 2, and it's fun to watch to see. I didn't know the result going in. I think every time they said the score in the South game, I covered my ears. But then later on, they said something along the lines of like, Mammoth proved they're top. So I had an idea that the Mammoth were going to win that game, but I didn't know it was just a 1 goal, and it was phenomenal to watch. I don't know. Great thoughts. Great game. What are your thoughts on your home team there, Melissa?
It's crazy to see Adam Jones with so many sock tricks. That's one of those things that it feels like you hear of maybe once or twice in the season, and I think I know he's definitely had 3 this season. I think he might even have had 4. So when he lights it up, he has 3 so far this year.
Yep.
That's just wild. I mean, not to downplay any of the other players, but there is definitely an element of luck as well as the skill in some of this, and he just seems to have a hot hand that just is not stopping. So it is really crazy to see him be so dominant, especially when John Grant Jr. only has 2 goals. This is pretty big. I think if the Mammoth actually go into the postseason, if he's still playing this way, I'd actually say their chances are a little stronger. We've had issues in the postseason, so but at the same time, we just were saying, Adam Jones often doesn't score in the playoffs, so that could be a big difference in the postseason. So yeah, I'm really happy to see them doing so well. Unfortunately, I did not get to go to this game. It was my stepfather's birthday yesterday, so I was looking for the replay on this one and was grading papers today instead. So don't have much more to add.
All right.
Add one more thing.
Go ahead, Tyler.
I was thinking about this. Between this game, you had Sean Evans and Adam Jones, 2 people that you wouldn't even pick out of a crowd as being elite athletes. But they get the job done, and so it doesn't matter. I guess what you look like. It's a matter of how you use it. And Jones is pretty darn impressive. Unassuming, because you don't think he's a threat. You always think of John Grant Jr. or even Callum Crawford as a name player, but that's got to stop. And now Jones is the A1 threat, number 1 threat there for this Mammoth squad. I think you need to throw out your defensive plans and focus on him.
Well, I think adding to that, not seeming like a threat, he seems so mellow and he doesn't seem to like to focus on him. So whereas John Grant Jr. is a big scorer and he likes to be flashy and he really likes to kind of be in that spotlight, it seems like Adam Jones is exactly the opposite. So in so many ways, I would totally echo what you just said, Tyler, that he is very unassuming. He doesn't look like he's one of the best offensive scorers. You just figure he's just another player. Might even think he's a D guy, just whatever. And he just kind of goes with it and takes advantage. So he's definitely awesome to watch. I can't wait to watch him play for a few more years, hopefully.
Well, I think I've solved the riddle of why he's doing so well. Adam Jones shares a birthday with Harry Potter. They're both born on the 31st of July, so I think that pretty much explains it right there.
Adam Jones
You're
is
a
really Harry Potter.
huge
That's awesome.
nerd.
What's worse is I actually knew the answer before Graham said it.
Yes. I don't know if you were using the word nerd as an insult there, Tyler, but thank you.
Not at all.
Moving on. Moving
You're
on to the
you're
last
the
game.
person who got my Matrix reference on Twitter earlier, so
I was
Good
gonna say,
point,
says the
yes.
man with Star Wars in the background. You can't be calling too many people weird.
Yep.
So, moving on to the last game, and I guess Tyler probably won't want to talk about this one, but we'll let you start, seeing as you probably watched all of it. I watched parts of it, but we'll hear your thoughts first, Tyler.
Stealth have a goalie problem is my current thought. I mean, home games, they continue to suck terribly. I mean, it's just bad. I think they were down 4 goals in the first 5-minute break. I think Eric Payne maybe had a save in that time, and he got pulled before the 5 minutes were up. He was out of the game. So I don't know if he can't get ready for home games or what the issue is there, but they've got a problem. The inconsistency and essentially not being ready to go or whatever it is, they come out so flat. I think I'm really starting to look at Coach Dan Perrault as maybe a root cause or at least something that can change. You don't have an easy job with getting a coach in the NLL because like who's available and better than what you have, and there's not a lot, but the team can't start home games like this. I think only one good home game so far this year and 3 or 4 duds, and fans aren't coming out, and there's got to be somebody's got to pay the price for that, and hitting a point now where it's going to be coach. I mean, Stealth are still in the playoffs, like if season in right now, because they have one less loss, they haven't played equal number of games, but one less loss, they're ahead of Calgary somehow, some way. But I don't have any faith in the team in their current state right now of showing up to win and producing to their potential. I think they've produced to the potential 2 or 3 games, probably 3 wins, so 3 times out of 9 they've played to their potential this year. It's bad, very, very bad, and I don't know what else they can do. And they've been relatively healthy. A couple changes out the back door, but it's not working, and so they just got to struggle. The last night the offense couldn't ever get 2 goals in a row, and the team can never win 2 games in a row. I found that little parallel there in my mind, and it's just inconsistency, never getting on a run, never having any momentum, and it's a bummer, and it sucks to watch them struggle when you know what the potential is from the 3 times they won. They played just phenomenal games. I don't want to talk about it anymore. What do you got, Melissa?
You know, it's weird to watch the Stealth struggling in all the ways that they are, because so many of those ways are the ones that it seemed like they were the strongest in a few years ago, and so it's an odd feeling, especially since they are your rivals. You both want them to do well because you want to play a good team, but at the same time you do want them to suck because, well, hey, that means you're gonna have a better time. So there's that friction of, yeah, I want your team to suck, but I don't want your team to suck. So yeah, it's really strange to see them just struggling, and it does have to be hard. This is the first solid season the Mammoth have had in a while. They've kind of struggled since 2007, when the team was kind of dismantled, and ever since it's just been very very hit or miss. They've had a few good seasons in there, but more of the seasons have been bad. So even with this season being as strong as it is, there's part of me that really doesn't want to be like, woohoo, we're rocking it, because I've been so often on that other side where they're just playing really horrible and they're falling apart and you don't know what the next game's going to bring, and they're hard to watch because they're sucking so bad. So yeah, I can completely relate. I'm hoping they turn it around. But yeah, I think they need to make some changes, because especially with Vancouver and just kind of that area, it seems like they're a little more fickle with the teams. And so, because it's such a hotbed of lacrosse, there's so many more options. Not saying that they're fickle and because of the sport, but losing those fans is going to be a huge deal, and we really don't want to see another team disappear. So I don't want to go down that path any longer. Graham, you have anything?
Not much to add. I saw most of this game, or at least parts of it. And yeah, Eric Penny just did not look good. And for the record, he did make 3 saves, but he allowed 4 goals on 7 shots in 4 minutes. So he certainly didn't start off strongly at all. Richards came in and had a pretty good game. He only gave up 8 goals, so that was, I guess he matched Cosmo in that respect, but the damage had already been done by that point. And you were wrong, Tyler. They did manage to string together 2 goals in a row, separated by 12 minutes. That's just not enough. That's I don't know if you'd even call that a streak. Technically, Buffalo didn't score in that time either, but it's not exactly momentum building when you're scoring goals 12 minutes apart. So Dane Smith. What more can you say about Dane Smith? Another 8 points. He's still on pace after now 10 games to blow away Sean Evans' record from last year. Evans set the record with 130 points last year, which was 14 more than anybody had ever scored before. People started talking about, okay, can anybody ever get to 130 again, even Sean Evans? Because you have to maintain almost 7 goals a game, or 7 points per game, or sorry, almost 8 points a game, I think it is, to get to 130. Well, Dane Smith is around 8.4 now, so even if he only scores, I did the math this morning, even if he only scores 5.75, I think it is, points per game for the rest of the season, he'll break Sean Evans' record. And if he stays around 8 where he is now, he's up in the 150-point range. Then we got to start talking untouchable records. But as soon as you say untouchable, somebody else will do it. But yeah, the numbers on that guy are just unbelievable. He looks like he can score at will. He looks like if anybody is open, Smith knows about it and will get you the ball. And how do you defend against that? And so far, nobody has been able to figure it out, I guess. So we might just see stellar numbers from that guy the rest of the season. Moving to our predictions from last week, we had a bit of a turnaround. Tyler went 5-0 the previous week, and then 0-3 last week. And Melissa went 2-1 last week, so she managed to regain the lead. I went 1-2. I only got the Colorado game right. So the current scores are I'm at 15-25. Tyler's is 3 games ahead of me at 18-22, and Melissa's back in the lead at 19-21. So Melissa, you get to go first with this week's games, and there are 5 of them.
Wow, it's crazy to have such a big weekend. All right. These were kind of tough, but it's interesting to see that it looks like we're all kind of thinking the same practically this week. For Buffalo and Rochester, I went with Buffalo. Right now, I just think they're just the stronger team. Calgary and Toronto, I actually went with Calgary. Toronto's been playing really strong, but I think Calgary really has it in them, and the fact that Toronto is playing back-to-back games, it's hard to say which team they're actually going to be putting more prep towards, and maybe they'll win both since they don't have to travel. I think that definitely could be to their benefit. But we're going to go with Calgary, which I think is our only difference. New England and Rochester, I'm going to go with New England. I think the fact that New England is playing very strong and Rochester is playing a back-to-back nights, that could actually hurt them instead, playing a young, fresh team that likes to run and gun. uh, with Georgia and the Rush, I think I'm going to go with the Rush. Vancouver and Toronto, I think Toronto's a stronger choice right now, which a few weeks ago, who would have thought that? So, Tyler, you're next.
All right. Interesting schedule for the weekend here. First up, Rochester at Buffalo. Buffalo's hot. Dane Smith is as good as advertised. He's got this little two-step drive, and he hits the brakes. The defenders step off. His hands are free. He's ripping goals. Stealth couldn't stop it. I don't think Rochester will either. So I got Buffalo winning that game. Calgary at Toronto. Calgary's had 3 straight close games. They get pretty up for playing in Toronto, the Canadian rivalry. But Toronto got their groove going right now and playing at home, so I'm going to go ahead and pick them to win that game. New England at Rochester. Even with the loss, I want to say today because I watched it this morning, but the loss yesterday, New England's good. I think there's them and Buffalo are the two top teams in the East, and then Rochester's not in that category. And I can see New England beating Rochester here. Georgia at the Rush. I like what Georgia's doing, but I like the Rush better. They can get this win at home. They've got a good home crowd now, and I think they like to reward those fans in their growing community with a win. Finally, Vancouver at Toronto, and blows my mind right now that Toronto has 2 home games in the same weekend. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in my 11 years watching the league. And I can't see a reason that the Stealth beat Toronto based on averages. The unaveraged Stealth team that's shown up 3 times can beat Toronto, but the team that shows up the rest of the time won't, and you don't know what you're going to get, so you just got to go with the one that shows up more frequently, even if it's the worst team. So I got Toronto beating the Stealth here. What do you got, Graham?
Okay, and just to answer your question before I get there, I wrote an article 4 years ago on whether having 2 games in the same weekend actually affects the odds that you're going to win the second game. Because a lot of people say, well, you'd be tired from the first game, so you don't do as well in the second. And others say, well, you're pumped up from the first game already, so you do better in the second. As it turns out, they're both right, because there's really no indication that playing 2 games in a weekend is any different from playing 2 games a week apart. But as part of that, I discovered that over the course of the now 30 years of the NLL, a team has played 2 home games in the same weekend 5 times. Once they won them both, once they lost them both, and 3 times they've split. So we're kind of making history here. So we'll see how that goes. As for my picks this week, yeah, mine are pretty much the same as yours for the most part. Buffalo over Rochester. Rochester just doesn't look like they're playing all that well these days, Dawson notwithstanding. But right now I think I take Dane Smith over just about anybody. So I'm going for Buffalo there. Calgary at Toronto. Calgary is desperately looking for a win after 3 straight OT losses. Actually, they're on a 4-game losing streak because they lost their previous one as well. But Toronto, I think, has found their groove, as you said, Tyler, and I'm going to go for Toronto in that one. New England at Rochester. Like I said, Rochester doesn't look that good these days. Picking them to lose twice in the same weekend, I'm not sure. I'm not thrilled with that. But I think New England is a stronger team at this point, and so I'm going to go for the Black Wolves there. Georgia and Saskatchewan. Yeah, Georgia's certainly fun to watch, but I think at this point Saskatchewan's just a better team overall, so I'm going to go with the Rush there. And Vancouver and Toronto. And I don't know how many times we've said this over the last few years. It depends which Vancouver team we get. If we get the good Vancouver team, that'll be a really good game. If we get the other guys that we've seen more of recently, Toronto takes this in a walk. But so I'm going to go for Toronto on that one. And it looks like my picks are all identical to Tyler's and only one off from Melissa's. So we are all going to sink or swim this weekend, I think. Yeah, that's about it for this week, unless you guys have anything else you want to add.
I don't know, I think a good discussion maybe for a future episode is just kind of talking about why some of the players get their banners raised and some don't. I know there's some that are disappointed that it's starting to look like in Denver, John Gallant, who is the only Mammoth player and a former captain. That he had 14 years. He's the only Mammoth player to have 14 years, and probably will be for quite a while. And he was captain and was on the championship team, and it's really looking like he will not be included in those numbers that are raised. But another player who is very divisive to the fans and hasn't done much for the team. He did a lot in Rochester, but not for Denver. Will probably have his up there just because of past history. So that might make for a good discussion, and maybe some people watching might actually have something to add that we can kind of read and add to that.
Mm-hmm. All right, that sounds like an interesting idea. All right, this has been another episode of Addicted to Lacrosse. For Tyler and Melissa, I'm Graham. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.